welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Yeah, likewise, Simon. Super excited.
Excellent. Well, I know we have a really interesting conversation today because we're going to be talking about architecting software and how that transfers into architecting the mind. And I love this connection. And I think you are a unique person to be able to combine the two. I'd love to take your initial perspectives on the link between architecting software and architecting the mind.
Yeah, that's amazing question. I look at it like this, Simon. In the end, the human mind is also, as I see it, is hardware and software, right? So as I see it, it's we have the body, which is of course made up of our sense organs, and this is connected via a very intricate, detailed system via the nerves and towards the CPU of the brain, right? Of course, it's much more it's oversimplified. It's much more complicated than that, but it's very similar to a computer in a lot of regards, right? So if you look at the computer, it also has, a processing unit, has a display, place where you can interact with, and when you create software, that's something that basically drives the value that you get out of a computer in the end, and that's very similar to what happens in the human mind. We have, and I think we'll go in detail later on, but we have these software or these, how do I put it in the right words, the beliefs and identities and the mindset that are imprinted and created automatically by the brain as we are growing up. And those are the building blocks of the software that the brain uses for us to navigate the world around us. So yeah, I see this as as of course quite far, and we're going toward that direction, but they have a lot of similarities in them as well.
Okay, I think I've got it right. So let's get the comparison. So the body is essentially the computer, and the mind is software. So where the mind is a program that is running on the hardware, essentially. So I certainly can understand that, and that's where the link's in. So what happens in that instance then? So let's just say I've got Windows XP. I've got a piece of software that's running my mind that is legacy, that's old, that hasn't had an upgrade for a while. What happens then to my thoughts and my beliefs?
That's a good one. So let's how I would like to approach that question is, let's start at the beginning, right? My mental model of a human brain really starts from understanding, what we do day to day and how we act and how we feel. Where does that really come from, right? Like you mentioned, we have our body, which is of course the hardware, and there's some part of the hardware that's flowing into the mind as well. So we have this mind body connection, and then the mind, which is part of the larger consciousness, and I think we'll come to that a little bit later, is the software part of it, right? So as you're growing up, the human mind basically likes to abstract things. Its main job is to make sure that you as a human being or as a life can survive, right? That's its ultimate role that's given to it from evolution, right? So having said that, everything that our mind programs inside is ultimately linked to make you survive. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't necessarily care if you're growing or successful. These are all constructs that we want for ourselves, but not necessarily the hardware or the software that's running inside wants us, right, to be. That's pure evolution, right? So having said that, you have the brain working for survival. We are brought into this world and we start noticing everything around us. As a kid, I'll go to my father and say, I'll see a tree for the first time and say, okay, what is that? Papa, what is that? And I have a 1 year old with me and I have a 7 year old boy. So I know that they're so curious because they want to learn everything from observation and from the people around them, right? So, and as we are growing up, we learn from what others tell us about things. So my father tells me, this is a tree. Oh, okay. Then I attach a label to it. This is a tree. And then I also say, okay, well, this is a tree. What does it do? What is it for me in this tree? Does it help me, or am I have to be careful with this tree? Is it dangerous for me? Then they give it a few attributes. This is helping us. This gives us shades, oxygen, takes away bad things. So I say, oh, this is a friendly tree. The same thing happens when we see a wild animal, for example, and say, oh, we have to be careful, they can hurt us. So we clearly distinguish, and the brain creates constructs, just much like a software construct. In software, we have hash tables. In software, we have maps that basically save a key value pair, which says, key is, for example, city name, and the city, for example, is London, right? Similarly, the brain creates a hash table inside. A similar, of course, it's oversimplified. It's much more complicated than that, but it basically creates a hash table and says this is this image. Whenever this input comes via the eyes and the feeling, there's something green and brown, and it looks like this. It's a tree, and then this tree has these attributes. It all comes together in an instant, so that the brain next time does not need to go through the whole cycle of deconstructing your experience. It just takes up the label, takes up what it means for me, and it takes it from there. Following this pattern, this is for the outside world. If you look inside, it does very similar things. Whenever, for example, as a child, you go and you, let's say, speak up in a setting with your peers. Let's say you're 7-year-old. You're supposed to present. So my son was presenting they call it in Netherlands, book by scraping, which is a book description. And I'm amazed that they're now doing book presentations for 7-year-olds in the school. So for me, that's amazing. So he has to go there, and for him, it was really good because he got some good compliments. People give him tips and tops, as they call it, in the end. Imagine a scenario where a child would like to go and present something, and the presentation unfortunately did not go so well. And some of the peers would come up and say, maybe this is not good enough, and maybe they laugh on a couple of his slides, right? What happens inside the human brain is it immediately says it as danger because of how we are programmed from from an evolutionary perspective. And then that becomes one of the instances where they carry, okay, maybe I did this action in public and this wasn't received well. So I look for more proof. If this happens one or two more times, then an abstraction is created inside the brain to protect you in the future, right? So very similarly, like you created a label for the tree and what it means for me on the outside world, you create a label inside your mind. Automatically, you're not doing it. Your mind is doing it to protect you in the future instances and to save your energy and to make you survive in social groups. So it creates a label and says public speaking is anxiety, and public speaking might mean I might be laughed at, and public speaking. So it kind of links in the hash table 2 or 3 feelings, and from there on, it kind of tries to prove its own thing. It's called confirmation bias, right? So to come back to the question, it's more like you asked about how does the mind software might be outdated. If you started with Windows XP and it's maybe running legacy, all of the identity that you have created for yourself, or better to put it, not you have created, which was created automatically by the brain when you were growing up, they are the outdated legacies now, as I see it, right? Because these are something which were created outside of your conscious attention. You did not want, at least I did not want, all of my shortcomings in my brain to be created, yet every day they come in my way in some way or the other. So these are what I call the legacy code, automatically created outside of our awareness, still running our thoughts and actions every day.
That is fascinating. And I love how you've described that. I've never heard it described like that before, but it makes total sense, which is, when children, so I've got a 4-year-old and a newborn, and I often think about my son and kind of what he's being exposed to at this very early age. So I'm very, very mindful of it. And all the things we're saying to him at the moment is positive. You're great at this. You're great at running. You're great at football. You're brilliant at this. Wow, you're so funny. Um, it's because I've learned through talking to really smart people like yourself that there is some sort of imprint that's happening in his brain at this very, very early age. So I'm trying to give him as much positivity and reaffirmations as I can at this early stage. And what's really interesting about what you're saying here is that this your son's 7 and it's already presenting, and that actually could be terrifying for somebody, but maybe not at the very beginning. Maybe at the very beginning it's really easy, but you're right, it's these imprints that you get. So how much of our thoughts, beliefs, feelings that we have in later life or in adult life are a result of early years, say before 10, before 12, from those early being in the playground or being in school for the first time, for the first time? How much of that is made up because of those early experiences?
I don't have an exact number. I think I have to look it up. But if you look at the research, they mentioned that by the first 7 years, 90% of your brain blueprint is solid, and that's basically what the children are going to carry forward into their formative years. So 7 years is the base, right? I mean, they say that for the first 1.5 years, the child does not even need anyone apart from the mother. They just want their primary caretaker. And I know as a father, I was like, I have my 1-year-old, and whenever I'm playing with him, he wants to come and play with me. But apart from that, he just wants his mother. And then, that's what they want for the first one. That they don't even need social care, for example, or socializing in the first 1.5 year. And then from 1.5 years, it's really important that they socialize because they want to detach from the mother and get attached to other people as well. So you have these 7 formative years for the first, really setting the blueprint of the brain. And then from 7 years till 12 years, the brain is kind of proving what it built in the first 7 years, if you will. So there is this reticular articulate system, RAS, in the brain, which is like a radar. And this radar's job is to make sure that it takes its own learnings so far and tries to prove itself again by using the stimuli from the environment. So if, for example, if you go into a football a match with your child in the weekend with the group, and he's like 8 to 9 years old, but when he was 6 or 5 years old, he had a bad experience playing football in that group. And when he grows up and goes in the same group after 2 or 3 years, when he's 8 or 9, the brain would still perceive all the comments filtered through what he received at the age of 6 and 7, unless somebody is actually proactively reframing it for them. Maybe this is one perspective that you could look at as well. For example, if the child is bullied lightly at the age of 6, or was felt excluded because nobody wanted to play with him, then at the age of 8 and 9, when he sees 2 or 3 kids, playing together, he automatically will feel excluded. Although at that time, nobody necessarily meant that or even wanted to do that. But the brain just takes it like that. So the first 7 years are really important. And I think that's where a lot of focus, at least I'm putting a lot of focus with my kids in the first 7 years to make sure that I don't necessarily only give the positive affirmations, which is great, of course, but I also want to give them the full spectrum, because I also realize with me that whenever you give a lot of positivity with the child in the first 7 years, when they go out in the world is totally not positive. But at least not, it's always, you can see it different lenses, but it's not really that straightforward, right? It's you will find all kinds of people, you'll have all kinds of different experiences. And if you only go with the mindset of that the world is a positive place, then you're up for a surprise later on, in my opinion. So I try with my son to really give him a perspective that, hey, this is positive, and you might not have these positive feelings as well, but they're part of you. So the whole spectrum of negative and positive are indeed a part of you, and you have to walk this line between those, kind of accepting both the feelings that you have and then still being able to navigate the road, if you will.
It's a really good perspective, and it's really interesting because I've often thought, going back to my comment a few moments ago, I am really positive with my son, but I think actually you're right, is that it's probably more important to be balanced, um, because the world is an unbalanced place. Essentially, there's going to be good moments,
Right.
difficult
Yeah.
moments. There's going to be great moments, and it's just, there is going to be a balance. And I actually was thinking about it just at the weekend, talking to my wife. I was like, am I too positive with him? Because I'm telling him he's great at everything, and obviously, he's just kicking a football for the first time. It's he's not there yet, but I'm trying to make him feel great about things. But actually, you're right. It's probably more about being balanced. Um, so that's a really interesting perspective. I'm glad you shared that, because I can probably adjust how I am in that situation. Because as a parent, you want the best for your children, and you're always trying to think about, well, what's going to give them the best outcome in life. And I suppose actually the best outcome might just be far more balanced than either positive or negative.
Totally, 100%. Couldn't have said it better, indeed.
Interesting. So the first 7 years are formative, and then up to say around 12, what's happening is that we're we're getting evidence from the world. Some unbelievable that getting evidence from the world that we're either confirming or denying kind of what we've experienced in those formative years. What happens then after that? Like, as we sort of adolescence, we become young adults. All of our thoughts and feelings, how do they then manifest themselves into the teenage years?
That's a great one. So I'll not go into the detail of how exactly it goes from teenage, adolescence to teenage. Specifically, I'll bundle it on an overall level that also applies to us, because after 12, a lot of what the brain wants to experience after 12 or 13 is freedom and independence, as you see with adolescents and teenagers. It starts seeing itself more independent. So, and that carries on, until we're adults, and sometimes even till the old age, until we really become aware of the whole system. So think of it like this. Let me find a nice metaphor, right, to try to make it very clearly understandable. Let's take two metaphors. I'll take one from my computer science architecture background, right? So the brain, as we discussed, likes to create abstractions inside. The only reason being it wants to be really efficient, it wants to save energy, it wants to make sure that it can take split-second decisions in any situation that comes from the environment, right? So that's its primary role, to be really energy efficient, make sure you survive in all situations. If you've given that baseline, from there on, it starts creating constructs inside. And these are just neural connections inside your brain, right? Just like wires being connected. The base layer is the identity, right? Who I am and who I believe myself to be. That's just the base layer of this whole programming, right? So if in the childhood I tried presenting a couple of times and I was laughed at and I was, not able to convey the message quite nicely, and that was confirmed by next one or two times of instances, then there is a belief being formed that I'm not good at presenting, or I cannot present good, and other people laugh at me when I present. And once that happens, the identity becomes that I am not a good presenter. So anything up after I am is the layer of your identity. That is the driving force of all of our beliefs, actions, and thoughts from there on. So you have this chain, which is identity at the bottom. Then you have a mindset, which is the lens, basically, which makes sure that your attitude towards any situation is filtered via that lens. And then on top of that, you have beliefs. Beliefs lead into thoughts. Thoughts lead into emotions, and emotions lead into thoughts, and emotions lead into your action. So that's the whole chain that's being followed. So let me give you an example. Let's say, let me think which is the right one to pick. Yeah, so this morning we talked about this post that I created on LinkedIn, right? It was all about I'm not good at managing money, right? If that is the identity that you carry, that I am not good with money, then what it will result into as a belief that I either can't earn more money, or I can't manage money, or I can't save money, or I can invest money better. And because of that belief, a thought typically follows whenever you see a friend investing into an ETF, or a friend investing into a property, or taking a bit risky decision, your belief will immediately create a thought that, hey, maybe he is good at it, but I'm not good at this investment. So that's why it's too risky for me. And that results in an action that you don't necessarily then invest into what a successful entrepreneur or a friend was successfully doing. So this whole chain starts really from identity, builds it up to the mindset and belief, goes to your thoughts, and results into your feelings and actions.
This is incredible, the way it all links together. But in some respects, what you're discussing is it becomes, for a lot of adults, it becomes a real hindrance, that you might have just been carrying a belief with you that I'm not good with money, or I'm not good in a relationship, or I'm not good at running, or I'm not good at this, because when you were very young, maybe you weren't, or maybe you just lost one football match and you stopped playing football after that because you were criticized for missing the goal.
Yes.
So this has carried them with you, and it can absolutely, and this is interesting from your coaching perspective, is that it will really impact on your potential as a human. I was over, like, if I was carrying a belief that, well, I've always been overweight, I'm always going to be overweight. Somehow you need to. How do you even know? That's interesting. That's the question, is like, how do we know what beliefs? Because beliefs are so instilled deep into our software, into our
Yeah.
brain,
Yeah.
that we might not even realize what beliefs. So how do you work with someone to unlock that potential and kind of get behind the curtain in some respects?
Yeah, that is the key question, isn't it? Um, it all starts with awareness. I cannot say this enough. And people think awareness is general. So anything that you're aware of, that involves a highly developed part of your brain, which is only available, I mean, that's as far as my research goes, to humans, right? It's the developed prefrontal cortex. It's our ability to reason on ourselves. It's what psychologists call metacognition, right? It's basically an ability to inspect our own thoughts and inspect what's going inside us. So presumably animals don't have it, and we can't prove it, but it's something that we accept and say, animals have this brain. Their brain says, "Hey, do this A, B, and C," and they just do it based on instinct, based on evolutionary mechanisms, right? For humans, this part is evolved. So it's not only of course, we have a big role of instincts, we have a big role of what evolution, how it shaped us, but it also gave us a wild card, which is this awareness and this ability to inspect ourselves. So think of it like this. There is this Hebb's law, and I think probably you've seen or heard Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about it quite a bit, which is the neurons that fire together wire together. It's Hebb's law, right? So it's basically saying you have a road in your mind. The more times you walk that road becomes more and more smooth, easier, and it's just the default road for your brain. In humans, it's possible to create a new and road out of that road, right? And that's basically saying, this is what I have been doing a lot of times in my life, but this is not working for me. The only reason why somebody would actually look for coaching or anything that they want in, what they want to get better, or they want anything else, what they're not happy with where they are right now, right? The moment you feel a dissatisfaction, a background hum, something is wrong with my life, or something is wrong with my actions, or I want something more, unless you have that impulse coming from you, you will not necessarily look for coaching. And the moment you have that impulse, then you are ready to really deep dive inside your mind. And then when they come to me, for example, then I would typically say we have to start with awareness. We have to uncover what is running you, right? So if you look at this chain, identity, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and actions, we have to start at the core. We can never say that, okay, now from now on you start doing this action, and you do it for 1 week, and after 1 week you'll start seeing changes. That might work sometimes, but only on a surface level. You have to really approach it from what does the person really believe him or her to be? Where did that identity come from? Who installed it? As I call it, being from a software background, right? I say, who installed your identity, right? And where did that get installed from? So it's more an introspection process, but it's not an introspection process which lets one thought introspect another thought. And that's a very deeper, let's say, paradigm. It might now, we are now crossing roads between really philosophy and spirituality a little bit, because my personal belief and what my experience is that as a person, you are this awareness where all the thoughts and everything in your experience is arising, right? So you're always able to disconnect yourself and see from a distance of what's happening, right? So if you have a thought that, okay, after this podcast, I'm going to go have my lunch, for example, or, in the evening, I have a friend coming over. These are thoughts that you are aware of, right? And these are fleeting moments in your mind, but you are not those thoughts. So there's a bit of a distance between them. So my approach is to position the person into that seat of awareness inside them, and then from there on try to deconstruct their whole identity chain.
Fascinating. So it all starts with that awareness piece and maybe a level of discomfort.
100%. 100%. I think you need to be really open to do this kind of an exploration. And for some people, it could be, it could also resurface old traumas, for example, some deep seated traumas. And then they really need, let's say, a clinical psychologist sometimes, or a clinical psychiatrist, when they have deep traumas. So definitely it breeds discomfort. It needs a level of openness, and a need and an inner drive to transform. Unless the person is not having an inner drive to transform themselves, or they see something wrong in their life or with themselves, this process is not going to work.
That inner drive, how does that show up? What does that feel like? How does that describe to you?
In my case, it was just going on so far and tried everything, and something just kept feeling off, right? So you try things, you do things. In the end, there are two types of people on a high level, right? People who are knowing what they're doing, and people who don't know what they're doing, right? I mean, that's how I see it. And not judging or anything, and it's not their mistake. It's just their level of awareness as they go about my life. I was a person who had no idea what I was doing, to be honest, in the past. So I came from a person who was hyper non-aware to an hyper aware, right? So I actually put a lot of effort in the last 7 years to cross that bridge. But I've seen both sides of the world and how different they are. So the person really needs to first go into inspecting what they are doing, and they have to question themselves, in my opinion. Where do they really want to go? What are they doing day to day? What is the ultimate goal that they're seeking, right? And unless we honestly answer that question for ourselves, I think the next step in your journey is typically a little bit far. Let's put it that way.
I love that this starts with deep introspection. I think people
Yeah.
will be afraid of that, by the way, quite
Yes.
often. I
Yes.
know at the very beginning of my journey, when I was getting into, I didn't even know what I was getting into. I just knew there was something that wasn't right, and I've always kind of felt it, and I felt it for a really long time. I'm talking a decade or so of just something's not quite right, but I don't know what that is. I also didn't know where to go. Like, I just thought that was me. If someone's in that situation today of they just feel like something's just not right, the way I would probably describe that is, in some respects, you'll be misaligned somewhere. And that misalignment is something to do with who you currently are, and who there's an inner instinct of who you're trying to become. For me, it's very subtle, but over the years, over the decades, it's become quite almost like an ache and a pain and a frustration, until I kind of started to really answer the call and, like, okay, it's tiring, it's exhausting. I need to find out what this is. Um, if someone's currently feeling like that or going through that time, or they resonate kind of with that, what do you said the first step is awareness. How do we get awareness of what it is?
That's beautiful, Simon. And the thing that you said about misalignment, I believe that all of us feel that at some point in our lives, right? This is part of being human. Most of us, or there's a percentage of us who tries to numb it down by stimulants, by going to the movies, by talking to a friend. We never really tried to question, maybe there's something inside us that we just need to have a deeper look at. We just always want to go outside in the world of senses. We want to satisfy this urge, this ache. We all have this ache. We have this misalignment. We always try to go outside. So we have to go inside. As we said, we have to try to just answer it for ourselves and be more aware of it. And the first thing that you need to really do is just sit still, right? I think that's one of the hardest thing that people seem to find these days. When I was starting 7 years ago, for me it was tremendously difficult. I needed either my phone or some kind of a stimulant, like a cigarette or drinking, and then sometimes meeting up with friends on the weekends. I was always trying to be somewhere else than where I was, right? And that is a big problem. It was a big problem for me, right? Because you can keep going in circles then. There is no end to it. You can live your whole life like that with that ache, but it's not going to solve itself. So the first thing is you just have to accept that you have to look inside. Outside, you're not going to get solutions. So the moment you realize that, you start sitting still, and from there on, you have the first step, as I see it.
You've just described my last 2 decades of just, which is the drinking, the socializing, getting high, just, anything to can't prevent from sing alone with your thoughts. That would almost be one of my worst nightmares back in the day. Now it's one of the most beautiful moments ever. And you can really
Yeah,
lean into the intuition of actually what's all the answers are within and what's it telling me. But gosh, yeah, for a long, long time, really long time, I certainly would have been in that situation of just trying to, I suppose it's avoidance of the feelings. Just get on with work, get on with socializing, get on with the gym, just do, chase, 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 chase.
exactly.
And I wonder if it's a time in your life. Maybe it's different for everyone when they actually kind of listen to the knock on the door or the calling, and they kind of go, okay, I need some introspection. My coach calls it self inquiry, which I think is an important. Is it an interesting
Yeah,
description for it?
absolutely, absolutely. The moment you accept that there might be something wrong or something to be looked at inside, I think that itself is a big shift. The moment we realize that we don't need to find all the answers or we don't have to solve all the aches outside of ourselves. I call it outside, the world of senses. The moment you want to look inside, when most people start, when I talk to people about meditation, they say, yeah, I want to do it, but I'm not able to do it because, hey, I think they try it. They close their eyes for a few minutes, and sometimes you don't even need to close your eyes, but they don't find anything there. They just are not. They don't have that space between the thoughts and actions, or the thoughts that are prompting them to act, and this awareness or this observer. So they don't have that space between that. And the first time that you realize, oh well, actually, there is this impulse to now go up and pick up a coffee. I can just watch this thought and not do anything. That's for me. I think this is novel to humans. I don't think when an animal would be having such an control or instinct to just being able to watch what's coming, right? As humans, we have this ability to just notice a thought and say, "Well, I don't necessarily need to act on it." You know, I think that's a turning point for most people.
I'm glad you picked up on that. That's a really brilliant point. Really brilliant point. And funny enough, I've been reflecting on exactly that the last couple of days. And this morning, I've been reading Mastery by Robert Greene, and he was talking this morning. Sorry, reading. I listened to the audiobook, but he was talking today one of the big differences between humans and animals. So, obviously one of the biggest differences is the human brain. And he was talking about the huge difference because animals, they are present. They are fully present in this moment. So therefore they always act on instinct. So I have a cat. If I put food in front of my cat, he'll go and eat the food, right? Or he's going to inspect the food. He'll always do that. So if if it's bedtime and I'm putting him out, then I know all I have to do is put out some food, and he'll go to it. I suppose in more, if you've got a dog, the dog's going to run after the cats or whatever he's run after. He's instinctive. The difference is, and I love that point what you've made, which is incredible because it gives us control. We can have a thought, the coffee, let's go for a drink, let's have a cigarette. We can have a thought and then we can inquire, do I really want to do that? But then you've got a craving or something inside you that says, go and do that. And maybe that's an old pattern, an old belief. I used to have a real challenge for a long time with emotional eating, which is I'd feel emotional, I'd feel stressed, and I'd quickly run down to the cafe and have a treat. And that feeling was really quite overpowering at times. And it's only through that observing, like, what is this? Like, why do I have this craving? Oh, I'm a bit stressed. There's something going on. It's easier for me to manage that now, or even not even think about it, just because I'm aware of it. It's like, okay, this moment will pass. I don't have to make that choice. And then what's interesting is what you're saying is that it creates a new pathway, where it's creating something new in the brain. Because I simply just don't do that anymore. If that thought comes up, it's just, I'm not, I'm, I'm a health and fitness person now. I focus on this. So you can almost replace it with a new belief or a new thought process instead of what I used to think about many, many, many years ago, which was, oh, I'm just a bit overweight, or it's just the way I am. Well, none of those things are true. It's a way of sort of challenging your brain and challenging your thoughts. So yeah, that was a really, I love that point that you've just made. It was really impactful.
Yeah, and I love it too when I kind of notice in myself, and the way I deconstruct it, just for logical minds, is you have this chain in your brain, right? Saying you have this situation. For example, there's always an environment situation, right? You feel stressed because let's say an email came or a phone came from you, get stressed. All right, there's something happening in your environment. Your brain wants to overcompensate for it. It wants to give you something to be busy because that's the chain, like you said. That's the pattern that's running in the background in your subconscious. The moment you observe it, there is a break in the loop of the brain, right? The moment you observe it, it routes via some other regions of the brain. One of them is PFC, which is the prefrontal cortex. It goes via that region, and the moment it routes, and that's specifically to humans, right? We have this ability to route and metacognize our own thoughts. The moment we observe that the loop is broken, and for the first time a new set of neurons are included in the chain, the neurons of your observation, right? Let's put it that way. Now let's say the first time you do it, these neural chain is really weak. So maybe the next time the loop just goes like this, and this path is missed. But if you do it 5 times, right, for example, then the chain is always going to go like this, right? And the more and more you observe it, this pathway is going to grow stronger by Hebb's law, right? So your sweet spot is to make sure that this path of observation, the more stronger you have, the more control you have over your whole chain, because this part is you in the end, as I like to oversimplify it. Yeah.
Excellent. So in some respects, this is linking into coming back to something really basic: good habits, bad habits. So if I want to start a new habit of going to the gym, but I've never done that before, what you're almost saying is, instead of having these beliefs, oh, I've always been overweight, I'm not a gym person, I'm not this, I was never good at school, I was never good at sports. And then suddenly you're like, oh, if you want to go to the gym 3 times a week, 4 times a week, it's almost like it's too far. But if you instead scale it back all the way and just create a tiny, tiny step forward, you interrupt the noise or the past and go, just put your trainers on. go for a walk for 2 minutes, and then tomorrow go for a walk for 4 minutes, and then go for 7 minutes, then go for 10, then go for a 50, then go for a 20-minute walk. Slowly over a week, suddenly you can be doing a half an hour walk a day, whereas before you haven't done anything for 2 decades. So it's these
Yeah.
really tiny little positive habits you could bring in to give you evidence that you can do the thing, whatever that is, and start to rewire your brain in some respects.
That's lovely. That you're almost there. In my perspective, I can add maybe a couple of cents there, right? Which is we're still at the habit level. We're still at the action level. We're still at trying to do something. But that's very difficult for most people, and it doesn't work. It might work for some people, might not for some. At least it did not for me. The reason was your brain will pull you back into your identity subconsciously. So you have to start at the root. You say, I am a person who likes to go to the gym, or I am a person who is fit. I am a person who does this. And then you prove with the action, right? So for me, that's really interrupting the loop, because when it's called cognitive dissonance, right? So the moment you tell your brain, hey, now I am a different person, the brain can't hold two identities, because identity is the base level. It's like the OS, right? So now you want to upgrade from Windows XP to Windows Vista, which was the next one, right? So if you want to go to Windows Vista or Windows 2000 or whatever, right? Not 2000, but whatever, Windows 8, right? So if you want to do that, then you have to start with changing your identity, because that is going to Windows 8 first. So you upgrade your OS, and then you have your programs running, which is the actions, beliefs, etc.
I got you. So is that more about self-talk and self-communication? I am a gym person. I am someone that's fit and healthy.
Yes,
I am someone that does the hard thing first. I am someone that gets up early.
yes,
And repeating that.
yes,
So you're actually saying repeating that first creates the belief before the action. So not the
yes,
other way around. So maybe I got it backwards.
yes.
So the action is last, or the actions are last because
But
continuous
it's very
actions.
important. Action is the most important part of this chain, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. See, but I see that. But what you're doing is you're interrupting it first with some. You're giving it some new beliefs. I'm a fit person. I'm an active person. Those sorts of beliefs first.
What we are trying to do is that when you act, your resistance will come. Oh, why do I need to do that? I have so 100 other things. So when you act, you'll have resistance showing up. So we are breaking the resistance before it shows up with identity level of communication, right? So if you tell to your brain, okay, I'm going to be a fit person, I am a fit person, and I am becoming a fit person. Sometimes the wording, the language has such a big impact on our psychology. Language is so powerful. In the old, and I know I'm diverting a little bit, but I think this is really important for people to understand. In the old Hindu tradition and Indian tradition, we used to have mantras, right? We had mantras which the old sages and rishis used to give people when they come with a problem. They say, okay, just take this mantra and just repeat it 108 times. They will give them a beads loop, and then they will just say, just repeat it 108 times and your problems will be solved. And a lot of them worked. You know what? Mantra was just repeating something in your brain so that your brain believes it, and then doing something about it. So that's exactly what I'm saying. You just have to tell your brain. The brain doesn't know what's the difference. It just needs, okay, I am this now. Okay, do I have proof of it? And then you prove it with your action, and you do it consistently. There's nothing that stops you from changing.
It's a really famous Muhammad Ali quote, and I'm trying to remember it. I might butcher it, but I, I said I was. Hang on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Muhammad
Yeah,
Ali
yeah.
is
No,
good.
see, he said,
I believed first, and then there I was. Something like
yeah,
that.
I believed first, but he was talking about. I'm going to find it. I I remember it. I remember it. It was about. I told everyone I was a world champion before I knew I was a world champion, or before I became a world champion. What was it? I can't remember. I'll find
I
it.
told to
But
myself. Maybe he told to himself he's the world champion, and then he became one.
yes, yes, it was something on those lines. I should have tried to research it, but only because came to me then. Um, before I knew I was. I knew I was a world champion before I knew I was. something like that. Anyway, but that's the whole point, because that's the self-talk, the mantra, the language. Ronaldo does this with football. Is I'm the best footballer in the world. You know, there was a great clip on social media the other day, which was him having a belief moment before he took a penalty, which was scoring is normal for me. I always score. And we win the game, or something along those lines. It was just, this is normal for you. I perform at this level. This is who I am. This is normal. And it was like a mantra that he was going through before he took a penalty, which was pretty incredible, actually, to see that he had that level of self-talk before the action.
Yes, 100%. And that's exactly this identity, belief, thought, action loop, because that's the power of your subconscious. Once it starts to believe who you are, all of your thoughts and actions will be aligned in that direction automatically. So you don't have to even put effort into it. And that's the beauty of it. But it takes effort, of course, but that's the right way, in my opinion.
So when you say that, thoughts, actions, beliefs, in that order, was that
So
the
if
right
you
way
if you
to
look at from the root is the identity, right?
identity?
And everything builds on top of it, right? So you have identity at the root, and that mindset is the lens. Then you have beliefs, thoughts, actions.
Beliefs, thoughts, actions. Okay. Amazing. So how can we apply this? Like, there must be so many things that people are trying to achieve far and wide.
Yeah.
What's an example of coaching that, you've had a client come to you with a certain belief? How have you been able to support them with new beliefs, actions, thoughts?
That's a great one. To be honest, I just started my coaching business end of last year, and right now I'm working on an online program, which will let people go through this experience for themselves first, and then I'll so on the side I'm working on this one-on-one or a cohort package if I go that direction. Um, for me, it's basically starting off when you want to apply it for any person. So I can't speak from experience yet because I don't have a real client because I just started 3 months ago. But for me, it's the most important part whenever a client comes is to kind of make them feel safe, right? The moment you have to ask them the motivation. Okay, why are you here? What are you really looking for? What is the big change? So what is the big problem in your life that made you come to a coach, right? And or what are you trying to achieve? That's one. And second is to reframe it in a very safe way, because the human brain loves safety. So that's how I would start. And from there on, we do the introspection, right? So I don't know if that really answers your question, or we can dig into detail on my process as well.
Yeah, well, I think what we can do is we can dig into a few of these posts that you've shared here, because if I think about here, which will resonate with a lot of people, is about why change is hard and what can you do. So really everything we've been talking about today is about going from who you were to becoming who you want to be. And if you have that ache, like I've had over decades, that kind of sits in the middle of that, there's something else for you, but maybe there's fear holding you back. Maybe there's an old identity holding you back. But change is hard. What is it? What happens if I fail? All that kind of ache. I only see as I got older, it's only got worse. It's never got better. Actually, it's got worse to the point of I have to do something, because or else I'm going to be miserable. I can't not do something. So just on that post that you shared, which was why you still don't have the life you want,
Yeah.
and why is it not your mistake?
Yes, that's beautiful. What I would like to say on this is we have to take a step back from a routine autopilot life, right? And that's the why it's not your mistake part. When we started this conversation, we talked about the brain creating abstract concepts, labeling things in the outside world, but also in the inside world, which creates identity, beliefs, etc. And these are the building blocks of our programming that keeps running our life automatically, right? So you have situations being thrown at you. I don't think a lot of people will disagree that a lot of things in the outside world are not in our control. Things just happen to us, right? And when things happen to us, what differentiates person A from person B is their response. to that stimuli. There might be a situation which is very similar to person A and person B, but they might respond in totally different ways, right? Somebody who's super stressed might respond at a train being missed as super miserable, but somebody who has a lot of time and just in a very good mood with friends, they might respond to the same situation in a very different way. So it's all about the programs that are running inside your mind. And they have such a huge momentum because you have never practiced this observation part, right? We discussed this prefrontal cortex and this seat of observation. Those neurons are practically not being used a lot. Let's put it that way, right? So if you have most of the neurons, most of the pathways, most of the beliefs which are being created because of that running on autopilot for 40 years of your life, there's a huge momentum that they're carrying. That's why change is hard for most people. The first step is to first of all acknowledge, yes, I want to do something about it. There is something wrong, like you said, right? And I can't carry on like this. Until that realization dawns on people, I don't think they will, invest enough time to do something about it. So that's the first step. They feel something is wrong or off, or somebody convinces them that something is wrong or off. Once that part is done, then they will say, okay, well, then now I need to find the right way to solve it. From there on, they'll go into this. What I've seen is, at least in my method, I will take them into a seat of kind of inquiry and being more aware of their own self, right? So it for me in my method, it starts because I'm a logical mind and I'm designing a program also for people who have a bit of a logical aptitude as well, is to start understanding how the mind works on a high level. Not really, you don't have to be a neuroscientist, but you have to understand how your own system is working. So we're always either carpenters, painters, drivers, we are software architects, all kind of people who are working and learning things on the outside to make a living, which is great. I think we ought to spend some time to understand our own mechanism as well on how we work, right? And once we understand that, we have a way of going in. That's the first step. Second step, start practicing, right? So start making your observation and your awareness neurons stronger so that you can deeply introspect what's happened. Once you understand the blueprint, how you work, then what does it mean for you? With awareness, you have to shine the light of your awareness on your own system. That's the second step, right? And from there on, you can start creating what you want in the future. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to go from a person who has a set of limiting beliefs that they're not good at speaking, they're not good socially, and they can't make friends very easily. Let's say you have these three limiting beliefs and the identity, which is I'm not a social person, right? That's the underlying identity that comes out of it. And you want to break it. You want, let's say, to go more with people, and you want to express yourself without feeling guilt, or you want to express yourself without being seen as a people pleaser, right? That's maybe, let's say, you want to achieve, right? That's your target from A to B. Now, from A to B, the first step is to first understand what's happening with you, what's the reason behind it, and please see it from a very empathetic and a non-judgmental way, right? See it in a way which is safe, because if you criticize yourself or judge yourself, then the subconscious brain just shuts off because it's built for your safety. And the moment it sees you're not safe or you're kind of self-critically judging yourself, that just shuts off for any change. So what you want to do is you want to change your subconscious. You want to architect your mind, right? So what you want to do is you want to make it safe for yourself. First, have empathy on yourself and say, okay, well, I am like this, and this is not working for me. Let's go. Why did that happen? And that starts with awareness. You most of the people will then just go into trace back what are the thoughts and beliefs and identities, how are they created. That's one. And secondly, they want to start practicing their new identity already, right? So what will happen if they want to be a social person? They would first say to themselves, I'm a social person and I express myself clearly in social settings. And secondly, they will like to take a micro action. We don't want to give their subconscious large actions because that could be overwhelming. We give them a small action, right? For example, they initiate a conversation with a friend to meet up. That's a micro action, right? It proves to their subconscious that the new identity that they're trying to build, that's working, right? So that is the kind of layering pattern that you have to build with them. So first step, make sure that they understand what they are in a very empathetic, non-judgmental way, being aware of these patterns, where they come from. They were very good and very useful till now, but please, you don't serve me anymore. Thank you and bye-bye. And from there on, start acting your future self, start talking to yourself like your future self, and then start proving to your subconscious by small actions. And that's exactly what I'm building online right now, basically.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love the work you're doing because I think it's so relevant and so impactful for people. Yeah, I really love it. So I've really enjoyed today's conversation. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. It's been great. If someone wants to learn more about you, get in contact, maybe do some work with you or learn more about your coaching programs, what's the best way of being in contact?
Yeah, so I have my website. I'll probably send you the website. You can put in the description. And I'm still working on my coaching program, but I'm a big fan of scaling out and helping as much people as I can. And I'm creating, I'm calling it, a world's first 21-day at-home retreat. So I know a lot of people want to go to your retreats to transform their mindset, spend a couple of $1,000s for a week. A lot of people can do that. There are a lot of people who can't do that because of their situations, right? So I'm creating this retreat that comes to you and gives you a head start in a very affordable way. And it basically takes you through this journey. So that's something that we can, I think that's something that could be a touch point from my perspective.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really beautiful thing to be creating. And I think anything that creates a level of introspection, reflection, and just so you can get to know yourself better, I think is always going to be a huge benefit. Actually, there's a bit I didn't ask you, which was about instinct and intuition. So all of everything that we're doing here, I think about intuition a lot. And how much of this comes back to you actually know the answers, not you as a person, but instinct, like there's some intuition inside you that knows the answers of what's right for you in your life, but we override it with our minds. So do you feel like that's um, a true, like, is that where we're trying to get to ultimately, which is we can rely a bit more on instinct or intuition to guide us of, this is the right direction forward. And therefore meditation, journaling, all those sorts of things can kind of get us closer to that. Is that the ultimate goal of where we're trying to get to?
That's a great question, Simon. I think this is one of the key points that indeed we did not discuss, right? Um, Here's my take on intuition and instinct. So whenever you feel like an ache, when we said we did not feel something is off, something is off, something is not right, that's our intuition and our instinct talking to us, basically, as I see it, right? So in my method, whenever I want to coach a person saying you want to go from A to B, your B is always going to come from your instinct, from your intuition, right? That's this observing entity inside you. In my belief, they know all the answers, what's best for you, who you are, and what's aligned. We said misalignment, right? What is alignment is this entity that inside you that knows it, right? So all the answers of what's the B for you, if you're A and you want to go to B, this B is different for everybody. Some people want to get more relationships, that gives them joy. Some people want inner peace. Some people want more financial security first. Some people want more children. So the B is separate for everybody, and that is something that comes from who they are, which is their observing power, the awareness inside it.
I love that. It's almost like we save the best moment for the last little bit of advice. It's like an encore if we were a band. but
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
but amazing. Thank you so much for today. It's been a real pleasure. I've really loved talking to you.
Yeah, same here, Simon. I love it's great that you invited me to the podcast. I love the conversation. And like I said, I was also amazed by what was coming out of my mind. It's just amazing for me.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Take care.